sentences, but not long words. I would have thought that if this microorganism, let me cover myself there, came out with DNA which looked more like humans than humans look like...
We're talking about the flagellum.
No, you asked me for an example of falsifiability.
Answer this question, then go on the offensive. Answer this question, then go on the offensive.
Well, I am answering the question. I'm saying that if the DNA of that microorganism were closer to human beings than human beings are to chimpanzees, I think that Darwinians would need, a long night down at the local bar, quite frankly.
Now it's your turn to ask questions.
Oh, good-o. Well, I'm a little, it's a little mean. Nobody seems to be plugging my books quite as much as I'm plugging other people's books. But I did want to talk about Michael Behe's wonderful book, Darwin's Black Box, where I take it that, and one of the things I want to compliment you on, Michael, and this is not just rhetorical, but is the fact that unlike so many creationists, certainly creationists in the past, you haven't just attacked other people or other people's theories, but that you've tried to explain some views of your own. And I gather, well, I know that you've put forward this view about design and complexity. You describe it in terms which, well, the modesty factor doesn't seem to be too high. The result of these cumulative efforts to investigate the cell, to investigate life at the molecular level, is a loud, clear, piercing cry of design. The result is so unambiguous, so significant, that it must be ranked as one of the greatest achievements in the history of science. The discovery rivals those of Newton and Einstein, Lavoisier and Schrödinger, Pasteur and Darwin.
What's the question?
That's pretty heavy stuff. Tell us about this theory. Tell us, for instance, Newton's theory enables us to quantify, to make predictions. What is your theory?
Well, it's that you can detect intelligent design in the interaction of parts of systems. And it's not really, suppose you were out walking in a woods with a friend of yours, and all of a sudden a friend of yours was pulled up by the ankle by a vine wrapped around it, and as he was left dangling, you pulled him down and you reconstructed, and you saw that the limb was covered over with leaves and that the vine was staked down. You would immediately know that that was designed. It was not an accidental arrangement.
So a design means a designer. Are we talking about God now?
Well, most people think so. I think so, but I want to leave it open, and not just because I'm being coy.
Now, are we talking about a good God now?
Well, let me answer your first question. Francis Crick, in 1972, wrote a paper entitled Directed Panspermia. And the burden of the paper was essentially that problems with imagining an undirected origin of life on Earth were so severe that perhaps we should consider the hypothesis that space aliens sent a rocket ship filled with spores to seed life on Earth a long time ago. Now, if Francis Crick looked at the bacterial flagellum or the intracellular transport system or the blood clotting system and said he thought it was designed by a space alien, I would have no scientific quarrel with him. I argue that you can tell who a system was designed, but the identity of the designer is a more difficult question.
But is this designer responsible when things go wrong, or for parasites, these complex parasites?
Well, that's the argument from evil. That is, bad things happen to good people, and it's been discussed in religious literature for many, many years, going back to the book of Job.
What about complex parasites? Did this designer design complex parasites, or is that evolution?
No.
I mean, do you get all the good things and evolutionists get all the bad things?
All right. That's a very good line, and we'll end on that note. Mr. Buckley and Mr. Lynn. Mr. Buckley, your opportunity to question Mr. Lynn.
Yeah. Mr. Lynn, I'm frankly a little bit emasculated by the approach of you and your colleagues tonight, which is really very ingratiating, and it really delights me. But it seemed to me that you were conveying the impression that the evolutionist theory is other than what most people know it to be, which is materialist philosophy. Now, it's wonderful that notwithstanding your affinity for that explanation of things, you still believe in the possibility of a creator, indeed even of a Christian creator. But what would you make with the following statement, Richard Lewontin? The primary problem, he means in the current confusion, is not to provide the public with the knowledge of how far it is to the nearest star and what genes are made of. Rather, the problem is to get them to reject irrational and supernatural explanations of the world, the demons that exist only in their imagination, and to accept a social and intellectual apparatus, science, as the only begetter of truth. Now, that is the public voice, as I understand it, of the materialist evolutionist. Do you transcend it, or do you disavow it, or do you consider it inauthentic?
Oh, no, I just disavow it, because I think that it is obviously possible to believe in the idea of a God who has a presence and an interest in humanity, without rejecting the overwhelming data that supports evolution and the failure of anything, Mr. Buckley, to in fact contradict it. In other words, you have picked a few squabbles with evolution, but you haven't even suggested for a moment what the mechanism is with which you would replace it.
Well, but what if one simply advances basic intelligence and says some such thing as that, in fact, a lot of monkeys turned loose over an infinite number of time would not reproduce Shakespeare? Does that sound as an arrogant rejection of random explanations for what we see about us?
No, not at all. I think that one of the great things about randomness and chance is that they are used in this process of evolution, as I personally view it, as remarkable tools within that toolbox of God's creative interest. I mean, to reject the idea that chance is something that could be used by the divine is to limit the power of the divine considerably. The divine is not sitting a bunch of monkeys in a building with a bunch of typewriters. I think we're a little more sophisticated than that, and I think that the process of evolution is far more creative than that.
I think you are more sophisticated, manifestly, by my criteria. But Richard Lewontin is a man with very substantial bona fides in your community. So if we want jointly to excommunicate him from the rational fraternity, I think we should do so piously.
Well, we Congregationalists, of course, don't excommunicate. That's one of the differences between us.
So therefore, we will do what with simply point to that as the excesses to which some nice people nevertheless go?
Oh, I think, frankly, Bill, that the truth on this side is that the folks who represent the position that we've been articulating have been very good about going to conferences and trying to separate people's scientific views from their religious ones. And I wish that the other side did the same thing. And I wish fundamentally that we could understand that some questions are theological questions, others are scientific, and we work better at solving and resolving and even discussing those questions when we realize that there are two kinds of language and two kinds of issues. There's nothing extreme about that position.
You can now ask philosophical and scientific questions.
Okay, well, Mr. Buckley, you know, I have heard it said that even God does not know the mind of William F. Buckley. But my question is the obverse. Do you know the mind of God so well that you could rule out the possibility that God conceived evolution as the process to bring his design to fruition?
Well, I decline to answer that question because...
On what grounds?
Because my imagination is finite and the Creator's is not. Under the circumstances, I simply pass, not only for tactical reasons, but for reasons of profound belief. I do find that when I can't answer. Go ahead.
No,
go
but
ahead.
that only goes to half of the question, because the truth is that if you are saying that you cannot imagine that a God could be that creative, that imaginative, then aren't you limiting, in a very severe fashion, your construct of God? I think that's a very serious question, and I think